Derrick Lewis versus Junior Dos Santos. Now, what really happened in this fight? This is a very explosive fight where JDS showed the technical striking trumps the brawling style of Derrick Lewis. Now, Derrick Lewis is known to catch more technical strikers eventually in his fights, and he's usually losing the bout until the finish happens. But the experience and the distance management of Junior Dos Santos gave him the win this fight. Now, the thing we know about JDS is he is immensely tough to deal with when he's moving forward, and he's a completely different fighter moving backwards. He doesn't really have a counter-striking game to threaten his opponents when he gets pushed back, and you saw a few glances of that in this fight when Lewis pressed forward. But JDS was able to throw a lot of feints at Lewis, and Lewis in general backs up to opponents relatively easy. So this automatically put JDS in a favorable position. And once Derrick Lewis got close to the cage, he almost got trapped for JDS to attack on. JDS, whenever Derrick Lewis went to the cage, he would try to fire out that right hand or a spinning back kick or something, because Lewis has nowhere else to back up to. And even when Lewis would try to scale the cage, for an example, JDS will use that to set up his spinning back kick and intercept Derrick Lewis. But JDS found really quickly, whenever he got into that close space, that close boxing range, Derrick Lewis always attacked with that right hand, whether it be JDS coming with a low kick, he would try to find an angle for his hands. Derrick Lewis is always there to throw that power shot. So JDS had to find a way to get in and get out, or get in and land a big strike on Derrick Lewis and not stay there that long. And he did an excellent job with that, and keeping that great distance and management of that distance almost the entire fight, because there were a few instances where he did get a little bit too close unnecessarily. He was able to get some feints out there, find the right hand, all that sort of stuff on Derrick Lewis, and Lewis just seemed to be lost in there sometimes. A great example of this was when JDS came in, he kind of went low, showed out his left hand, and then went for the right overhand over the top as he covered the distance behind that feint. Derrick Lewis just tries to put his hands in front of him, just tries to get away from the punch entirely, and JDS here was able to get in, create an angle, and get out. Did not want to stay in line in case a right hand was going to come at him, which for the most part of the fight it did. So he faded out to his right, swung his right leg across to the point where he was getting the parallel stance so he can move horizontally pretty well and get that great angle on Derrick Lewis. I mean, this is probably the best angle you ever want on an opponent when you're striking. And unfortunately for JDS's case, he missed that left hook, and it would have been devastating if he was able to connect with it. But he gets out immediately, doesn't want to be in there anymore. This is great distance management from JDS. And just like that feint he threw at Derrick Lewis, he was coming low and throwing that overhand right a couple times in the fight. He was able to get close to connect, and he did connect on Derrick Lewis pretty hard in that first round. And it got to the point where JDS was able to land that spinning back kick. Derrick Lewis started scaling the cage to his right. He started moving out to his right to get away from that right hand, but JDS was able to use that to set up and intercept Derrick Lewis with the spinning back kick as he's moving into it. And that seemed to hurt Derrick Lewis very badly, to the point where it was kind of hard to tell if he was faking or not, but he seemed to be in pain for a long time even after the round ended. But the fact that Derrick Lewis throws out that right hand whenever the opponent comes in that distance still holds to be true even when he's hurt to the body. And JDS just casually walks at him and tries to soccer kick him, and that's when Derrick Lewis tries to land the right hand, but it doesn't connect too clean because the leg is in the way. It blocks a lot of the punch getting through. After he got hurt to the body, JDS kept that distance management again, right? He wasn't trying to get fooled by anything, faking his jab at Derrick Lewis, and while Lewis is holding his body, JDS went for the legs because Lewis was completely exposing the legs, and this is excellent. I wish fighters did this more. Whenever the opponent is hurt, they always try to headhunt or go to where they hurt the opponent, so in this case, JDS going to the body or something. But instead of that, knock off the balance. And that is what JDS does. He kicks out the leg of Lewis. Now, the reaction of Lewis is actually very weird here, because he grabs onto his leg afterward, and he doesn't even grab where JDS hit him. He grabbed it toward his knee, but JDS kind of kicked the calf. So I don't know, Lewis could be playing possum here a bit. And you could see he was looking at JDS when he was doing it, and he launched that right hand when JDS was going for another soccer kick. But JDS was onto it this time, he retracted it quickly, and he pivoted to his left on the outside of the right hand. Now, the thing about JDS, like I said in the beginning, is he's a completely different fighter moving backwards. He's a lot easier to deal with. And Derrick Lewis got JDS moving backwards a couple times in the fight when he was throwing that switch left high kick. Whenever he threw it, JDS backed up, and he created so much space for Lewis to start pressing forward, right? But after every time he threw it, he allowed JDS to walk him back again. That was the momentum he needed. Get JDS moving back and continue that pressure. JDS was very cautious of entering on Derrick Lewis. Right, Lewis would throw out some feints sometimes, and JDS would react heavily to them. Whenever Lewis threw that left high kick, JDS would immediately get clear away from it, almost crossing the entire cage. He gave Lewis many opportunities to walk him down, but he would just watch JDS and wait for JDS to come back at him and pressure him back. It's hard to play that counter-striking game while moving backwards against JDS. When you allow him to dictate the pace and keep that distance management alive, it's a hard guy to deal with even today. I mean, later in the fight in the second round, when he threw out that switch high kick and JDS backed up, it did look to me like Lewis was ready to cut him off and put on the pressure. He started going forward and he started looking for his right hand, and JDS was scaling to his right. JDS always moves one direction when you're pressuring him. And this was excellent. This was perfect for Derrick Lewis to create some opportunities for himself. But after he measured for the right hand and he saw that JDS was too far away, he just stopped. And he allowed JDS to rotate around and get back to the center of the cage. I mean, that was a completely missed opportunity for Derrick Lewis. Now let's look at some of the moments of the fight here. And we'll start when JDS rocked Lewis in the first round. The first time he lowered his hand, faked, Lewis dropped his hands and put him forward to block JDS from moving in on him and create a huge opening over the top for that right overhand. And when JDS was hunting down Lewis, measuring for the right overhand again, he kept that low stance. So now Lewis saw where he needed to throw his punch. So Lewis started backing up and he was actually measuring with his left hand. They have a very similar reach. I think Lewis has like an inch or 2 inch reach advantage. So him reaching out at JDS, he feels the distance for JDS to connect on him. And JDS wasn't completely quite past the hand of Derrick Lewis. So Lewis just ducked and moved his head away from the right overhand. It missed. JDS completely overextended. He was chasing the finish. And Derrick Lewis landed a big right hook to JDS. But what JDS said about this punch kind of shocked me. He said it didn't really hurt him. And we know Derrick Lewis's power as well as JDS's damage he's taken his entire career. So that's quite impressive that he was able to take it and say that it wasn't that powerful. And at the finish, again, JDS did the same thing. He was kind of ducking, changing levels, faking to make it look like he was going to the body or something, and Derrick Lewis was always caught in that bait. Derrick Lewis lowered his left hand down like he was going to block or deflect a punch to the body or something, and JDS reached for the power hand of Derrick Lewis, eliminating it, parrying it, found an opening over the top for his right overhand, and the punches you don't see coming are the ones that hurt the most. JDS got Lewis to focus low, and he went high. And this one definitely hurt Derrick Lewis. And that's pretty much all she wrote, so great win for JDS, man. Rising the ranks at this stage of his career is, I mean, quite exciting if I'm going to be honest. Who I would love to see him fight next, I would love to see him fight Francis Ngannou. I mean, they're both calling out each other. The fact that Ngannou wants to fight pretty much makes all the sense in the world to make it now, because he is higher in the ranks and he is close to a title shot himself. So I believe this fight should happen, and the winner of that fight should get a title shot, I believe. Even leapfrogging Stipe. Stipe is waiting too much. You can only wait so long until someone leapfrogs you. So I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown, and if you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. My podcast and Nightmare Matchups are going to come out, and be on the lookout for those. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.